The Nigerian Economic Summit Group has projected that the country's real GDP may drop by 4.1%, while investments will drop by 39.4% this year. The group's projections for the economy was contained in its May 2020 report titled Macroeconomic Outlook, Update, COVID-19, Global Oil Price and the Nigerian Economy. Under the scenario, the economic think tank group also foresees government's revenue plunging by 40%, while inflation rate may rise to an all-high level of 15%. Under its second scenario, or business-as-usual situation, in which global oil price averaged $20 per barrel and Nigeria's oil production per day remains at 1.3 million barrels, the nation's real GDP may decline by 5.3%, while investments and government-earned revenue for the fiscal year will dip by 50% and 51%. The group also predicted that in a third scenario, or worst case, whereby global oil price averaged $15 per barrel and Nigeria's oil output is maintained at 1.3 million barrels per day, the nation's real GDP may decline by 7.3%, just as investment level may dip by 65% and government's revenue by 63%. It's projected that the inflation rate may hit an all-high of 18.4%. The NESG stated that its projection was done based on the regional-wide dynamic CGE model of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, which was revised to accommodate the uniqueness and peculiarities of issues under consideration, being COVID-19 and the impact of weak oil price on the economy. Now, according to the group, the model involves dynamic optimism, optimization, behavioral assumption, while extracted projections for 2020. Joining me now via Skype is PricewaterhouseCoopers West Africa tax leader, and also he is the research director at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group Fiscal Policy Roundtable, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, to discuss the role of the NESG Fiscal Policy Roundtable in ensuring economic stability as well as necessary structural reforms to drive key non-oil sectors. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Oyedele.
Thank you, Tolu, for having me.
A lot has already been said, even in the intro. The role of the NESG Fiscal Policy Roundtable, what role are you playing in supporting economic stability, particularly at this very critical time?
Yeah, maybe just to give some context, the NESG, like you rightly introduced, is a private sector initiative to try and support government with insight, research, and also generally a partnership or collaboration between the public sector and the private sector to be able to address the challenges we face, particularly from the economic viewpoint. So everybody would agree that today one of the biggest challenges we face is in the area of taxation, but even more broadly, the fiscal system. Whether you're talking about low tax revenue, so the fact that the revenue itself is not diversified, or you're talking about debt, or you're talking about the cost of servicing debt to our revenue ratio, or Q1, according to the MBS, was as high as 99.2%. So the Fiscal Policy Roundtable is the initiative of the NESG with support from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which was established, the policy round was established in 2018. And part of what we did was to undertake a study. We know Nigerians mostly don't want to pay their taxes. We can all hazard a guess as to why, but we thought it would be useful to have concrete, hard data to support that, and more importantly, to use that to inform decision making. So the study we conducted included what we call citizens' tax perception, and we found out that the tax morale is one of the lowest in the world. And our tax morale is your with the belief that tax evasion is wrong. Nigerians generally said they rather not pay their taxes. In fact, about 83% of adults and households do not see anything wrong with evasion, or they think it's wrong. Understandable. For businesses, That's about nearly 70%, 65, 69% to be precise. So this study was speaking to more than 10,000 individuals and households across Nigeria and 5,000 businesses. So we then asked them, why start? Because we found out that, in fact, more Nigerians pay informal taxes to non-state actors than those who pay legitimate taxes to government. One of their major reasons is lack of trust in government. So Nigerians don't trust government, and they also don't trust tax officials, and they are not happy or satisfied with the provision of social services and infrastructure. Either those are not provided, or where it is provided, the quality is not up to what they want. And they also said that the process for paying taxes is largely unprofessional and corrupt. 1 in every 3 adults said they were asked to pay a bribe in the process of wanting to pay their taxes. By the way, this is not just about FRS. This cuts across FRS, state internal revenue services, and local government. But the good news is that Nigerians actually say they are willing to pay their taxes if we are to provide social services to them. And the priorities for individuals and households are education and healthcare. This is even before COVID-19, so you can imagine today, healthcare is probably the #1 concern. For businesses, the top priority and security. So since we've done this survey with policymakers from Ministry of Finance to the Joint Task Board to round back, and everybody that needs to play a role in this process, including lawmakers. And I have to say, some of our recommendations have already been enacted into law through the Finance Act of 2019, but there's a long way to go. What we have now done is to do a revalidation study, validate those recommendations we have, cutting across policy, legislation, and tax administration to not prioritize. So we now have what we call the 10-point agenda for the tax system.
Now, I like to come in because looking at the scenario, we have the 1, 2, 3, and all of them not really looking good. Now, structural reforms. What reforms do we really require to diversify Nigeria's revenue base?
Yes. So we have to think about it and say, where we are currently, what does it mean? What's the picture like? So the picture today is that if you're talking about revenue accruing to government at federal level, at state, at local level, you see that oil revenue is the significant component of that amount. If you look at state, for example, in 2018, 2019, they generated about 1.3 trillion naira, all the 36 states plus the FCT. And they shared about 2.7 trillion from the federation account, which is mostly oil revenue, but also there's still some component of non-revenue. But if you put it all together, you find that the component of oil revenue, directly and indirectly, is well over 50%. The few times that we have claimed as a country to have generated a higher percentage at non-oil revenue wasn't because the non-oil revenue grew so dramatically. It was because the oil revenue component fell very significantly. And the way to diversify it structurally is to say the oil sector itself and the revenue we get from it, is it diversified? Every time the price of crude oil goes down, we struggle. Whereas I can tell you as of today, many countries around the world, including our neighboring countries, are actually making more money now from oil than before the pandemic. Why? Because the price of petrol, for example, in many neighboring countries in West Africa is around $1, which is close to 360 or 400 naira. What they just simply do is to impose taxes on fuel products. Whether the price of crude oil is going up or down, they continue to generate revenue. You also find that we have other areas of the oil and gas industry where we're not playing well, like refining, okay, like petrochemical, like fertilizer. If you have all of those, they will not all be affected by the pandemic or crisis of the price of crude oil at the same time. If you go beyond oil and you think about non-oil, of course, you have to start asking the question about how efficient are we, even with the little we are collecting. We heard that the last version of the budget approved by the National Assembly has a component of 2 billion naira for a library for the National Assembly, even at this time, which I consider very insensitive. So there's efficiency of how we collect and how we utilize the revenue, but also expanding the tax base. And expanding the tax base will mean that you think carefully about all the various sectors of the economy, how can they contribute to revenue generation, from agriculture to telecommunication to services to manufacturing, without killing them. So you cannot tax investment and production, otherwise people don't produce, people don't invest. And you have to also make sure that you treat people equally. So the rich and the mighty and the powerful, as well as the big companies, should not be given any preferential treatment compared to smaller companies. Once you have all of this in place, you find that gradually you start moving the needle such that we move away from 6% tax to GDP ratio to something more decent, maybe around 15%.
But time is almost running out now. Now, let's round up on this note. What kind of recovery do you see? We see recession. It's a global thing. But what kind of recovery do you see? Can we do this in 60 seconds?
Yeah, I'll say that a U-shaped recovery is more likely, even though I would love for us to have a V recovery, but it's not looking like that. The reality is that majority of our people are out of business, they're out of employment, and particularly the MSME sector. They have spent not only the profit they made in the past, they have spent their capital. So it will take a while for them to come back. But hopefully this does not take too long than it needs to be. But I think it will be a U-shaped recovery.
Mr. Oyedele, it's always very nice having you on the show. West Africa tax leader and also the research director at NESG Fiscal Policy Roundtable. Thank you for joining us on Business Nigeria this afternoon.